And welcome everyone. This is Blender Today 51. Give me a thumbs up if everything is okay. I'm testing a new setup here just to keep things fresh. This week there's so many things that I need to show you, that I need to talk about. So let's get to it immediately. I'm gonna wait for your thumbs up in the chat. Hopefully everything is okay. And sound is terribly low. All right, so how low is that? Is that okay? Thank you. Okay. I always get confused with these things. These live streams, computers and stuff. Sound is good, all right. Blender Today is in beta. Yes, it's not. All right, so let's get to it. First thing, good news. Blender has been accepted in the Google Summit of Code 2019. That is great news. That is the project that brought us so many really nice projects actually. So okay, thank you for the thumbs up. Thank you, everything is okay. So basically it means that Google is gonna be sponsoring some projects that students are gonna be working on it, but it's just crazy how this keeps happening. Blender keeps getting accepted. So like, do you know Sergey Sharvin, for example, working on the movie clip editor motion tracking? Well, that also started as a Google Summit of Code. So imagine the good things that could come from it. So you heard it first in Blender Today. Then, well, I made a tiny video. What do you think about that video? It was kind of an experiment that I did. It was late at night on a Friday, and then I arrived home, and then they added this awesome feature colored wireframes. So I needed to make a video about it, but I wasn't at the office to make the short videos that I used to make. So I'm just I just did it here. But we can talk about it, about Blender Today and the future of Blender Today and these kind of videos. So before moving on, let's see what's new in Blender today. Well, not today really, but in this week actually. Speaking of Blender Today, the questions have there is already a thread going on. Thank you, Eric, for making it. It's on blender.today. It will redirect you to the Blender community website, where you can see already people posting awesome pictures and a bunch of questions about the questions that you want. I like this actually better, that people are making their own blog posts beforehand, because they are already helping each other. So some questions, they're already being answered by the community. So that is super nice. Good job, community. Let's get to the questions in a bit. There is so much going on. Where to begin? All right, let's see the meeting notes. I have my own meeting notes, and today I don't know why I was thinking, why don't I just write my notes in the notes? Isn't that, wouldn't it be smart? So let's continue. Focus. The focus is on 2.8 fixes, of course. 75 bugs have been fixed last week, but actually the branch, the Blender 2.7 branch, it's getting updated too. It's getting some fixes, of course, because that's supposed to be the stable part. But it's getting quite some of the fixes. Of course, some of like Eevee stuff, it doesn't get it because it's a different render engine, but or a different viewport stuff. But many of the optimizations and speed ups in cycles and everything, it's actually working there as well. So if you're still in the 2.7 team, then hashtag 2.7 team, then you can still benefit from many of those optimizations. So wireframe display mode now supports object and random. Oh, thank you very much. Add BPM support and tempo, snapping, grid on the timeline, and sequencer. MIDI support. Well, actually I can show you in a bit how to, I saw a video that you can do this with the other softwares too, with Blender, but thank you. Continue with the updates. Color wireframes. I already shown that in the video, but basically what it means is that you can have wireframes on pretty much any object. Let's open something that is not too heavy. So the Blender Today intro video that I made the last week. So in the wireframe mode, not only you have the regular color, which is, it's okay, but it can be hard to read in some backgrounds. You can also change the object color, which by default is white, but you can already see more or less how it's working. And if you set the color of your object in the object settings under the viewport displays panel, then you can set the color per object, so you can tell the objects apart, and that is something that it was really lacking in Blender. There is some discussion going on. There was some discussion going on about why was it controversial, why wasn't it done before. Well, there are many reasons. Basically, now it fits. Now there is a place for it. There is like, okay, shading, then there is single object random. You go to solid and you have single material object random, and even more texture, because you can see it in it makes sense because you can see it in texture in solid mode. But in it's actually now fits with the design. It makes more sense. We're using color in a different way in 2.7, in 2.8. In 2.7, the color was mainly used for like groups or linked data. You're still using it nowadays for it. We're still using it, but it just didn't fit. It's just like if you okay, that was 2.7 crashing. So if I open 279 factory startup, because it has to start from scratch, where would you put the wireframe settings? Under shading or display? Where? Between the grid floor or the toggle quad view, which is two completely different things, or this wall of settings? It didn't really fit. And actually the main thing behind why it wasn't implemented is because there was this idea that it should be a bit more advanced than just colors. If you just can set any color to any mesh, then when you give it to another, like you put it in a blend file, you share it, and you choose the color green. And the green in 2.7 used to be for groups color, for the object inside of a group. Now we don't have groups, so we don't have that issue anymore. But now there is also more fancy kind of drawing, because you can have the drawing of your wireframes and also the outline of your mesh. So there are many more layers of fanciness that we can go on with the new Opencl and pretty much everything here. So yeah, the rule-based system that Tom proposed once, it was a great idea. It didn't get implemented because of priorities. Basically, it was no developer really jumped into super excited to do it, and yeah, that was mainly the reason. What is a rule-based system means? Basically, that you could do more than just color an object with one X color. You could specify, okay, all the objects that have this material, then name it with then assign this color, for example, or all the objects inside this layer have another color. So there was a rule system that it could be written, so that way it would be very easier to understand, much easier to understand. And if you open somebody else's blend file, then you would also know what's going on. Why are all these objects pink? Well, because they are in the layer whatever. So that would make it a bit more visual. Yeah, that didn't get implemented. The feature is not there. There will be, though. People are being asking about having a color per collection or per layer. Well, that is planned as part of the overrides. Basically, anything is part of the override system. So imagine if you could have an override on a collection where you can say, okay, all the objects in these collections have a I don't know, material whatever, or a colored object color, or anything. Basically, that's what the override system is designed to do. The override system was supposed to be part of 2.80. It didn't make it to there were just too many topics to add 2.80, so they will be part of 2.81 hopefully. I bet. I mean, the project is almost there. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Is it real Monday today? Yes, it's real Monday. You're not drunk. I'm not either. I'm just having a little sip, just to keep my radio voice ready. Hey, this is huge. Animator, if you're an animator and your playback has been slow, well, good news. Now Blender has a sort of cache for meshes that are not deforming. So for example, if you have a bunch of objects in your scene that are just props, or they're just moving around and they're not really, not moving around, but they're laying around part of the environment, they are now cached. So when you do playback, is they're not gonna, basically they get calculated once and then used over the rest of the animation. So that is a huge speed up. It's also multi-threaded. So if the more cores you have, the faster it's gonna play. And the topology is what I just mentioned. So if it doesn't change between the frames, then bam, it's cached. So it's hard to put a number in how much faster it is, but it's just, yeah, just you should try it. This is still the CPU as it's mentioned here, but the idea is to make it even faster by using the GPU for that. So imagine that the possibilities are quite huge with the speed ups in it's cut. Okay, there you go. And the top is also cut. Anyway, the window. I don't want to mess up this line. That is it. Actually, it's a small line, but it's a huge improvement in speed, workflow. So echo. Did I? Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry. All right. Now it's good. That will sound sorry, guys. I know. I clicked the window that it wasn't. All right. Thank you. Fixed. All right. Continue. This one is huge. Give me a thumbs up if it's fixed. The peak. The wall of text is insane. I feel so bad for people wearing headphones. Okay, thanks for the thumbs up. The peak memory issue. This is a huge improvement. Also, it's hard to put it in words, but let's see. Peak memory usage when loading large blend files was reduced, particularly when using only parts of a linked library. So this doesn't say much, but the let's make a visual example. The files from Spring or any big production file, when you open it, it starts loading all the libraries, everything that comes with that file, and sometimes that takes gigabytes and gigabytes of data. So you open a blend file and maybe what you're working on, it's only a couple of gigs, but the file itself and all the libraries maybe is 20 gigs of data coming from all places. Well, Blender, until before this fix in 2.7 even, before this fix, like 1 week ago, it would basically load everything, like pick the memory, like load everything and then drop it and then go back to using whatever you only have in the viewport or like whatever you're working on. So sometimes if you had 16 gigs of RAM and your file was loading 20 gigs, then it will crash on open. It will just, I can't handle it, so it crashes. Thanks to this fix, now the reading of the file is much more safe because it's only going to load whatever is needed when it's needed. It's not going to do it at first, just checking and then dropping it. So this is kind of a big deal. It doesn't sound like much, but it's a huge deal because it means that files that we couldn't open before, because whatever reason, now you're actually now we can actually do it properly. Also, now blend files bigger than 2 gigs can now be opened. I didn't know that was a limit, but yes, before there was a limit of 2 gigs when opening .blend files. Interesting. The transformer. Okay, yeah, this one I have them all lined up here. Then 3D cursor lovers. Do you love the 3D cursor? Yes, I bet you do. Who doesn't love the 3D cursor? Actually, I read online that many people not loving the 3D cursor. But people that don't love the 3D cursor, maybe they're not really like Blender users. They are like just getting started and then hating this thing. The 3D cursor can now be rotated manually. You can enter the panel here on the sidebar, the rotation XYZ. You can just basically, yeah, just wiggle it around with the sliders. I don't know if you get to see it. It's hard to see, but here in the middle of the viewport, I'm rotating my guy. And you can even choose the kind of rotation. So you don't love it. Hey, why? Echo again? No, don't, please. Anyway, X, Y, Z, quaternions, and basically anything. Love the 3D cursor, nice, loving the 3D cursor. Don't troll me, don't keep saying that there is echo if there is no echo. I'm just, I don't have my headphones on. I don't want to look like a gamer, you know, like those people that are making videos and they're like collapsing this. Okay, no, there's no echo. Jesus. The 3D cursor now got awesomer, but what else? Wireframe drawing. Yes, I didn't cover that last week, but it was actually added 2 weeks ago. The Sculpt mode, now you can also display the wireframes. So this wasn't really working like entirely before, but now even with like in Topo, you can draw the mesh. So you can just basically see the subdivisions of your mesh and the wireframes as you're doing it. So that is pretty neat. Thank you, Clément Foucault. Next, speaking of wireframes and wires, the 2D animation, there are so many areas in Blender, like first showing us some Eevee and then now some sculpting and now 2D animation. Yeah, it also has that. Well, the 2D animation pipeline, for example, from movies like Hero. It jumped to the party, it joined the party of the wireframes. Yes, wireframe power, it's now part of the wireframe. So same shortcut, same everything. It's just now one more of the team. So yeah, armatures are the ones that are a bit left behind. So let's make it happen. Let's think why wireframes are, why the armatures are not displaying wireframes, why it's needed, and I think it makes sense now that every object has a wireframe except the armature. So it's probably a matter of time until it comes back. The cool thing though is that you can it plays faster because it's more less resource hungry, and also it disables all the effects. So they are, because they look weird with wireframes, and also just to make it a bit faster. So like in 2.7 now, having wireframes is actually slightly faster. And also, as a bonus, you can see the exact strokes that the animators did. So that was pretty fun. How like the smoke that usually looks super good, like it's actually now just a bunch of circles here, and even this one. So what it looks like just simple lines, it's actually filled in by hand by the animator. So you can see all the nasty things that animators do, thanks to the new wireframe mode in Grease Pencil Object, thanks to Antonio Vázquez, developer from Spain. So get some code from Spain. Can you also send some good weather, please, Spain? Next, shortcuts. The long-awaited shortcut for setting the start frame and the end frame now has been assigned. So in the past, in 2.7, it was E and S for start and end. The issue is that the timeline now is part of the dope sheet object editor. Sorry. So the editor has already S for scaling and E for extruding, I think, or extend. Yes. So the timeline, since it's sharing the shortcuts, there was a mix there, conflict there. So now control and end, or fin in Spanish keywords, or home or inicio in Espanol. So yeah, control home, control end, and that way you can set up the start and the end. However, I do prefer this popover because it pops upwards. We're gonna talk about that soon. It pops upward, and when you're using a pen, it's very fast to just like click hold and then drop it, whatever, like drop it in the buttons that are immediately above the button. So you can just do clack, like clack with the pen. Is much easier, but I got used to using that. But now there is also control start and home and end. It's the buttons that are usually above your numbers in the regular the numbers, no, and above the arrows in a regular full keyboard. Next, so I already talked about this, all these settings, wireframe display, division, pick memories, read files. Yes, I already mentioned. The transform panel got simplified. Basically, when you move a when you transform your objects, now the panel is a bit more compact. It used to be super big with all the constraint settings, and it didn't really work that well, so now it's been cleaned up. Now it's a bit more compact. Then can we scrub the timeline with the left mouse button? No, not yet. That is there is a thread on developer.blender.org with the list of all the, not only that, but many other tweaks and fixes that has to be done to the left click key map. The left click key map is part of it needs to be fixed, but it's an ongoing process. The home stretch, the 1 week, all developers here, it's going to help a lot, because you're going to get feedback from artists and developers like in the same building, so you can just tell them, okay, fix this, fix that, and then discuss ways to have, because the idea is that is that not only the left click key map gets fixed, but it's also similar to the right click key map. Both should be kept up to date and not too different from each other. The editor corner, yeah, this is a bunch of little patches that Harley Exon has done, and he is so like with the picky, but in a nice way, in the UI and making changes, that he also made a patch where when you're using double width lines, where like a high DPI screen, it fixes the padding around the icon super nicely. Then the shading audio again. He's hitting some key, was messing up the audio. What do you mean? Am I? Sorry, I hope I'm not. Okay, you sound like underwater sometimes. Okay. Maybe it's... Okay, I'm gonna remove the compressor a little bit. Maybe it's that. Let's move on. Maybe I'm messing up something. Let's continue. However it's done, please be clear with what is going wrong sometimes. So he's also working, but audio. Is it though? I'm gonna become a gamer. Sounds okay-ish. Okay. Next. Do you like the effect? Okay, so your mic is muted. No, it's fine. Okay, let's continue. Thank you, Lopo, Isaac, and everyone. It can go wrong, but I will try my best. Because there are so many things that I wanted to talk about. Harley Exon, for example, he been fixing the small areas on the sides here of the editors where it makes it bigger, so it's easier to fix, like to drag and align. Also, you can click, go down, and you'll see the cursor now is changing. That is something new. You can do it sideways, and it was gonna change the cursor accordingly. Also, when you do it in a different direction, or when you cannot join it, for example, if you move it and then you go to an area where you cannot do it, the cursor is gonna tell you cannot join it. Also, if you go up and down, it's gonna have a little arrow in the icon where you can see the big arrow and the small arrow. So Papa arrow and baby arrow, they're all part of these UI fixes. It's so nice to have someone like Harley Exon just looking at those small details, right? Because those are the ones that sometimes developers are not want to be bothered doing it, because it's just you have to spend hours trying to understand a little bit. So yeah, let's continue. The Cycles Opencl kernel, that is actually here, has been further optimized. For our test scenes, times are now within the 15 seconds range from 55 seconds range. So it's insane. If you're using Opencl, this is gonna have even a bigger impact. So non-Opencl even, it's also reduced. Like for CPU and for regular thing, it's very small, but it's an improvement. So pretty nice. I think the buzzing in the audio was that I had a few too many objects around the area where I'm controlling the audio. I think I covered pretty much everything. Let me, oh no, there's another patch from the community. Yes, the menus in 2.7. Let's see if I can open 2.7 without breaking, without crashing. Yeah, oh, okay. I don't know if, well, 2.7, sometimes the menu will go upwards or downwards depending on the type of menu. But for example, here in this case, there is plenty of room up and down, but some kind of drop downs will open up and some of them will open down. And that was yeah, it's a mix of reasons. Ideally, they should all open in the same direction, and whenever there is no room, of course, open up or down. Now, in Blender, every menu, it will always open downwards. So the improvement, it makes it a bit more predictable. Now you know which direction is gonna move. So that is pretty nice. Of course, if it doesn't fit on the screen, like if you're rotating, if you're moving this down, and there's not enough room, you can just always go up. That has been fixed. The only downside though is that the title of the drop down is on the bottom, and then you have to be reading upside down. So that is a bit weird. Maybe it could be changed. Ideally, there is a proposal on having, instead of the item repeated, like plus y x plus y again, is to have this value in the middle and then the drop down around it just placed in the right place if there isn't enough room. Next, local view. I know you like local view. Who doesn't like local view? So in 2.7 you have a broken Blender like I do here. So you go to local view and it will move the view, but do a bunch of things. Enter local view and also zoom in to the objects that you have. Blender 2.8 had the same, it had the same issue, but the issue was added actually. It was it's just to make it look the same as 2.7. The feedback from people, from the users, is that it's just not always what you want. You don't always want to enter local mode and then zoom in the view. So now you can actually disable that. How do you do it? Well, it's part of the operator. So now by default, it's still the workflow that you have a bunch of objects, you enter edit mode, and then it will center the view. So that way you're entering edit mode. But if local view. Thank you for reading the comments. This zoom in can now be disabled by the operator. So the option, it's part of the key map. So you go to key map, you can search for local, and then in local, in this case local view. So for example, numpad plus / is what brings me to local view. You will find here the frame selected option. If you disable that, now when you press / to enter numpad, to enter local mode, local view is not gonna move, zoom in and out. You can also do it for the other operator, for the one in the regular /, and that way you will never move it. Or you can also assign it like maybe it could be a different shortcut. Like if you want to zoom in, it could be like Control/. We are not using it for anything. Or like Shift/. Interesting. What do you think? What do you think it should be? Should be by default not zooming in, or should it be maybe another shortcut like Shift or Q or Control or whatever? Local view ++. Yes. Then I think I'm pretty much done. The last feature. This one is not, it's very exciting for modelers, sculptors. If you're sculpting, and you will probably know that the multi-res modifier, multi-resolution here. So the multi-resolution modifier, when you subdivide and you have the object with shade smooth, when you're in sculpt mode, it would always go to not shaded smooth, so totally flat. Now it's completely smooth, like a baby's baby. Yes, it's smooth. That's it, pretty much. Thanks to Sergey Sharivin, our own Russian doctor from Blender Animation Studio, because the multi-resolution is being used a lot at the Spring Open Movie project. I think I covered everything I wanted to cover. Plenty of things. I already mentioned the community stuff, that Blender got accepted for the I already said the Google Summit of Code, and the question that Alexander posted was, please add BPM support and tempo snapping grid to the timeline and sequencer. This, yeah, that is something that is not possible at the moment. Maybe it shouldn't be too hard, the BPM support and tempo snapping. But on the other day, I found out that Ardor has the software now has its own YouTube channel. So Ardor has its own YouTube channel that, if we can find it here, they just published a new video, the first video in their channel, where they talk about Ardor. They discuss all the features, which is insane, the list of features. If you don't know what it's doing, it's an open source, pretty much do everything you can with audio. You can I check out his YouTube channel. He also makes music, and he does live streams making music with Ardor. This is completely open source, completely like cross-platform and stuff. But the thing that I was interesting is here that you can synchronize LTC signal playback from Audacity or your boy Blender 2.8 even. So you're scrubbing the timeline in Blender, and it also does it in Ardor. So with this software, you can do anything. You can make music, you can edit your music, you can even have video playback. So for example, in this case, you can have the video itself. So I think it's a great companion. It's open source, free and open source. It's I think they have like you can compile your own version, or if you want to support, you can download it for like $1 or something like that. That is all. Let's move on to Blender today. It's a Pro Do, yes. Let's continue. Thank you, Solveig Cavert. Thank you very much, appreciate it. Let's continue. Wow, 8 likes to this for the comments. Okay, let's going. Thank you, Eric, for making the post, by the way. So Chan asks, many people were upset that watts are the unit for light in Eevee, and many will prefer using lumens. In my opinion, watts are good because the light I know from action shooting are all in watts. I think we should have just the option, maybe. Like we have different units for all kinds of things, for radians and degrees, for example, for rotations, and why not having the same for, because yeah, WOTs they are like easy to understand. They're easy to, like, if you're doing real life lights, usually it's in WOTs, but LED lights are being more and more popular, and they're the future basically. So they use lumens more easily to be future proof. So I think it should be just both. H Goody asks, hey Pablo, I'm wondering if the Blender developers ever have trouble finding a balance between interacting with the community and making development accessible, spending time just making new features. I recently dug into the code for the first time and it was great to interact with the devs. Have trouble finding a balance between interacting with the community and making development accessible. Yeah, spending time making new features. Yeah, I think the developers, like, there is so much on their desks from like old projects or ongoing projects that never end. It's like the software it's a bit hard because it's never done. It's not like oh, okay, this is the last line of code in Blender and done, it's done. Okay, now I can finally go home. It keeps evolving and keep more people get involved. And now in 2.8 there has been a huge effort in making the code more consistent, like so many cleanups. The whole modules were removed or rearranged in a way that it's more accessible, and now more than ever there are more places to interact with the developers. There's devtalk.blender.org for asking anything, like from how to build Blender or to like what's new in Blender to anything, user feedback, cycles, for example, Python. If you're not familiar with Python in general, you can just ask and you'll usually get an answer from people from the community and the actual developers working in it. So it is just the best moment to start learning Blender development too. But yeah, I think they managed to add their own features in their own free time. But I really like when people do it in a nice, productive, constructive criticism, and in general, like everybody trying to help, because we don't want to get burnout developers. They are already super hard to find. So let's continue. Jean de la Core. Hello Pablo, could you talk about possible parallax implementation when you guys reunite all around the table to discuss the future of Blender in Operation Homestretch? I like the Operation Homestretch. Okay, yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna ask Clément, and since maybe we can also make a live stream from the Blender studio where the developers are going to be. Momotron 2000. Hello Pablo, will someone from Blender Foundation be an FMX this year? I think so, yes. Today Ton was asking around, hey, there is this FMX, but there are so many things going on right now. Like at this moment we are planning the release of Spring Open Movie project. There are so many things that I bet that there will be we have 2.8 and we have Spring Open Movie project. So I'm really sure that there will be Blender Foundation people there, Blender Studio in general, artists or developers. And in the past has been proven to be very successful. So I bet. Personally, I'm not gonna go. I think I really want to go to Annecy again and to Mundos Digitales in Spain. So I'm hoping for those two, maybe more. Hopefully I can go to CTN or SIGGRAPH, but that's not really possible at the moment with the current budget. Eric asks, Pierre, in the right-click select forum, propose an idea on displaying colored edges. That is, edges without faces. At the moment, lines without associated faces are not colored, so they need to have a face. So, interesting. I'm gonna read more on this, but yeah, it sounds. Now that we have colors, it's just a matter of adding it to more places, right? With the right UI. it has to fit. Let's not start adding buttons everywhere. Let's try to think in a way that it fits with the current overlay / shading system in the Workbench. Gustavo Rosa, is there a way to select another object in Sculpt mode without leaving the Sculpt mode of the selected object? Yes, you can. I think you. Wait. Let's see. Is there a way to select another object in Sculpt mode without leaving Sculpt mode? It should be possible, and then nothing has changed in that. So if I have this object, then I have this object. If I go to Sculpt and then I select the other object, maybe if I disable the lock modes, yeah, you can still do it. The issue is that by default, the lock object modes, it's enabled. There has been many people confused about it because in 2.8, 2.7, the default was to not have it on. So it didn't exist actually, it was part of 2.8 because of multi-object modes. So what do you guys think? Should it be on or off? Let me know. Let's continue. Only Nip. Hi Pablo. My animation playback is in some cases very slow, only 10 FPS. It's probably because preparing the meshes is only single threaded. Do you know when playing back the timeline pressing spacebar will become multi-threaded? Actually, I just talked about it, about this improvement today. Let me know how it goes because it's only for the time being for non-deforming meshes. But there will be improvements because now Blender uses Opencl, which is much more superior, but it just needs to be like the whole system underneath was removed using Opencl, and now it's being improved and improved. Alt-click is for zooming. Oh, I'm using right-click select, maybe that's why. But yeah, it will become much faster, that's for sure, especially when it's using CPU and GPU. Adam says, hi Pablo, I made a proposal for renaming objects straight from the viewport. Get the script. Oh, the script. It's an add-on. Viewport rename. The renaming from the viewport, yeah, basically the renaming of the viewport, the idea is that you could just click on here on the name and then you can rename it, but that was never really implemented. The other part of the code was to have to bring back the item name here in the panels in the sidebar, but it's just a bit too much at the moment. I tried to do it myself but then I found out that this panel is actually made in C, it's not Python, so I couldn't do it myself. I'm just too stupid for that at the moment. But if anybody in the community wants to help, please join. It's basically the name of the object and the name of the object and the name of the bones, the armatures, if it has it. So yeah. Let's see here. Let's move on. Is it possible now to scale to 3D cursor? For example, select face S0 and it will snap to 3D cursor. Yes, it is. That hasn't changed. It's the pivot point here. 3D cursor. I'm still not familiar with the icons. Yeah, we are all confused with the icons. There is a patch, by the way, to improve the separation of these buttons and also make it a bit more clear here in the UI that in which section you are, and also getting rid of this. Do you guys use the breadcrumbs up here? You can't really do anything. You can just like drag the icons around, but you can't. I don't know. It helps, but it doesn't help at the same time. So yeah. Let's continue. Pixelink, don't be sorry for being late. You can watch it later. Sam, hey Pablo, another Blender fanatic here. Yes, I know this question has been asked quite a lot, but will Eevee be able to feature mesh lighting before the big release? I don't know. It's not in the roadmap, but color wireframes wasn't also part of the roadmap when it was planned like time ago. Wireframe mode, yes, was part, but not color wireframes. It was just like it just happened because it fits with the rest of the needs, and you can't really predict how much time a feature is gonna take. Not always. So sometimes there is extra time, but this sounds like a bigger project. In 2.8 we now have collections. Also in 2.7 we had render layers for compositing. In 2.8 we now have collections. In the compositor, will the same functionality of the own render layers be applied to collections? This is interesting that you mentioned this, because it's actually wrong, because it's not meant to be like that. But it's interesting to see that you think it works that way, because it means that we are not communicating it. The 2.7 way was with render layers, whereas the 2.8 way is view layers. So what you have here is the old render layers, and what you have, collections, are more like layers in 2.7. So this is the view layer view. Maybe we should just expand this again, just for people to see view layer or not. So in view layer, you're going to see all the collections, which are basically the layers from 2.7, and this is your view layer, right? Your view layer number 1. Then you can make another one, and it's your view layer number 2 with, for example, a bunch of without the collections, with another different layers, basically. So you have one view layer with a number of layers, the same collection, and then another one with a different. And when you render it in the compositor, you should see the view layers here. It says layer, but it's actually view layer, and it's called render layers. That is super confusing, but it's actually view layers. Maybe at some point it's gonna be back to render layers, because it's confusing more than it's helping, actually. And the reason is that now every view can be rendered, so that was the name. Confusion. Hey Pablo, I know I already saw mention that. Samuel asks, thank you so for the color wireframe. Thanks Clement Foucault, he's the developer that made it. I'm currently working on floor plan project and had to tweak the wireframe display color in the user pref. This is so much easier now. Awesome. Yoda Ninja, hey Pablo, the serious one. Why Blender do not remember values for spin, bevel, insert, extrude anymore? It's a bug. It sounds like a bug. Report it, please. The important one, how can I access move gizmo without clicking on that T panel? If I assign G for move gizmo, then I can't use G for move, like GX10. No, because the gizmo is a tool. You activate the tool. Whereas in the other shortcuts, the G, R, S, they are like transform, they are commands. They execute the command. So in that case, I would suggest to use maybe this panel, the shift space is in this there you go. If you do it fast, it works like a pie menu, and then you can move between the different gizmos. But yeah, that's why that's the reason. It's one is a gizmo, one is like enabling the gizmo itself, the tool, and the other one is to actually execute the movement. Marco Modena asks, I almost speak in Spanish, why Blender not using lumens and candelas instead of watts? I already mentioned at the beginning of the question section. In Sculpt mode, can we see the mirror modifier active and smooth shading with auto smooth? Smooth shading with auto smooth active. That's not it's not possible at the moment. No, because no, I think it won't. The issue with auto smooth is that when you're sculpting, it can look weird, right? Because they're doing both two different things. I'm not sure. If it was possible in 2.7, then it should be possible in 2.8. Eventually. 2.80. Phillips asks, Blender 2.8 is awesome, but I recently found a tiny problem I need to nitpick. If you accidentally delete one of the entries of those preset menus, for example the presets for the dimensions in the output section, it looks like there is no way to recover it. When I tried undo does not work, reloading no. That is a tricky one. not a tricky one, but actually the presets that you see, that you find in Blender, these presets here, for example, they are blend files. This button here is actually deleting the Python files. These buttons, for example, the NTSC, that I'm never gonna use for TV, so I remove it, and this is actually removing physical files on my hard drive, on my drive, like locally. That should definitely have a "are you sure you want to delete it?" because it's actually deleting it. And the issue is that you can maybe have a very specific like a set of settings saved here that you can save it as your own. You add it and then it's there it's there, but you can also easily remove it, and then if you don't remember what were the settings, then you're in trouble. The all of those settings are in your config Blender 2.80, and in the 2.80 you will find the scripts, presets, render, and then you will find whatever setting that you save. So for example, if I add one here, it's gonna make the asd.py. If I rename this, then inside of Blender is gonna appear as if I rename this. It's just basically just loading a Python file, like a file itself. You can even edit that, and you can make it do anything from that. So it's very fragile, the preset system in Blender. It's very primitive, to say the least. You can actually edit that Python file and make it do anything in Blender, and it will show up here in the dimensions panel. So it doesn't make any sense. We need an asset manager. We need it more than anything. An asset manager is like essential. So 2.81, hopefully. All right, it's 9:56 p.m. so I'm gonna read 5 more questions. Let's see if I can make it fast. Maybe I can do a few more. Nathan, hey Pablo, do you know if Blender 2.8 will have more support for Substance Painter exporting? Ask the people at Substance Painter. They are they mentioned that their Blender like audience is huge, so they are really happy to support Blender in that way, like providing exporters and just making a tighter connection with it. So yes, you should ask them to make a nice add-on that can fix this, can make it work. The resources that Blender has are too small to even have to provide to other companies. Imagine if Blender had to make its own I don't know, Unreal, Unity exporter, and other companies. It's the other companies that should make the Blender ones. Hey, and that happens only if users ask the companies. J. Eddie says, hey Pablo, loving the progress 2.8 is making, but will there be any plans to make a return of negative lamps? They break the PBR-ish world, but maybe it could be an exception. I'm not sure how is that gonna work, because remember that the idea is that 2.8 like cycles and EV work as close as possible. So if you do it in one, then you're gonna have to break the other one. Dead Drago, how do you render a normal and ambient occlusion maps in 2.80? Blender 2.7 you had a button on Blender Make It. Why can't 2.80 be easy to do it? That is planned. It's not it's ideally EV is supposed to replace the internal Blender game engine, internal Blender render engine. I almost say the G word. As much as possible, as close as possible, but it's a work in progress. But the idea is that it should do it on for the release. It should be possible to do it. Ahmad asks, in Blender 2.8, video clips play very slow in the movie clip editor, even prefetch. Videos play nice in 2.7, but not in 2.80. Are you sure that you are that you only have the movie clip editor open and not something else? Maybe in the background, maybe things going on. If the slowdown is like too big, like huge difference, then you could report that because it's not normal. Mason asks, do you have any plans improve NURB tools for precise modeling? I haven't read anything about any developer working on NURBs. I'm sorry. Dominic, color of the viewport display can be generated automatically from material nodes. Sort of a best fit some cases. I think that's a good task for an add-on. Like generate, maybe it could be for an add-on. I don't even know how many questions, but let's do 3 more. Let's see, Neutronic Polygons. Good evening, Pablo. Good evening, Neutronic. I'm personally loving the new color wireframes. Unrelated to that, I think you can pretty safely remove the 1-minute cooldown on the YouTube chat. Since it's no longer used for questions, there should be some sort of spam protection, but 1 minute seems a bit overkill. Thank you. I think I'm gonna G-word pass from Ton. Thank you. I'm gonna think for the next time. I'm just gonna do it, and then I can read more, read faster sometimes when I spot some questions that I can quickly answer. Dead Drago, another question. Can you make the links in edit mode darker in 2.8? It's hard to see them. Can you post a picture, please, and then provide maybe a color example that it would be better. I'm in charge of the theme in 2.8, so of the default theme, and the light one. The light one is a bit behind. I'm just too many things going on at the moment, but ideally, like at the end, now that spring is over, the project spring is coming to an end in 1 month. It's the last month we have to kick it, so things are gonna get back to normal, at least on that side. I don't even know how I'm managing to make Blender today, though. We can talk about that later. I have some plans, but I have to see if the plans align with the rest of the world about Blender Today future. Nuno, Alex, I noticed that in 2.8 you cannot right click in the UI and check out the source like you could. It's going to be re-implemented. It is implemented, it's just disabled by default, because in Blender 2.8 a few things that really annoy me in 2.7 is that, for example, there were parts where you could right click and it will tell edit source, edit translations in parts where it doesn't really make sense. So you would do edit source and it will tell you that it cannot do it. Then what's the point? Why are you showing me that? Why are you teasing me that way, Blender? And then you also see it in buttons or in things that it didn't make sense. Sometimes even there are buttons that only say edit translation, like what translation of what? I'm clicking nowhere. So there are the translations, and the translation now only show up if you have the edit translation add-on. It's an add-on that comes built in with Blender. If you want to help out with the translations, that you need to enable the add-on, and then once the add-on is there, you're gonna see translations. Edit source, it's enabled when it appears when you enable the interface here. Interface developer extras. It's going to activate a bunch of more settings around the interface that help for when you actually want to develop. So when you want to change Blender itself, or like the UI, or do some Python-y thingies. In this way, you can also enable the Python tooltips, which are disabled by default, and now you can see more, because in 2.7 it was a bit noisy. Like the tooltip alone was like way too big, with so much information that if you're not a power user, you don't use it. So if you are a power user, you probably know about user preferences, and you would enable the corresponding settings. I'm 3 minutes past the deadline, so thank you. Going from local to global with audio. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I had a great time tonight. I am sorry for not being able to go through all of the settings. I have headphones. I didn't notice now actually. How's it look? Did I look like a gamer? Can I be in the corner with like my Doritos and my Mountain Dew? Okay, jeez. All right. It's actually a nice word. It's not spring yet. Spring is coming, both the season in this side of the hemisphere. I'm not forgetting about you, Australia or Patagonian fellows. The Open Movie project spring is coming along amazingly. I don't know, have you seen today, like every Monday there are updates on the project itself. If you haven't checked it out, go check them out, because they're every week they're added more renders and more like tests and animation stuff, and it's super cute. Animation improvements. Every shot has its own folder in the sidebar, where you can see the progress of every shot. It's very, very nice, and people are even leaving nice comments and contributing and giving feedback, so it's a very nice feeling there. That is all for me this week. Let's get together. Let's do it again next time. Same place, same time. I'm gonna leave with class with the same as last time. I will see you again next video. Ciao. Thank you. Yeah. Now we're talking.